Hello and welcome to my channel where I share my experiences as a queer, late diagnosed ADHD woman while I play some of my favourite cozy games. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, please stick around. I'm very glad to have you here. Today we're talking about what it was like growing up as an undiagnosed autistic child from very young going into my teenage years. The game I'm playing today is called Unpacking, which has quickly become one of my favourite cozy games to play when I just need to wind down, and it feels perfect for this topic. I found my old diary recently when I was staying at my mum's. From ages of 6 to 13, I'd say I was obsessed with keeping a diary. I still do to some extent. I just don't write in it as frequently as I did back then. I think I would have been around 14 when I wrote this, that critical period when you start to realize things that shake your world, like how teachers are just human beings who aren't necessarily there to help you, or how your parents might not actually know everything there is to know about life. I'd written, I watch the people around me. They all desperately want to fit in, teachers as well as pupils, trying to be cool like the cool kids, everyone looking the same, dressing the same, listening to the same music, liking the same boys. And then there's me, the alien, the girl who won't ever fit in, so why bother? I want to be free, but people really hate you for that. No wonder why people are so desperate to fit in. When I was reading this, I was struck by what a perfect summarization it was for what it felt like growing up autistic and not knowing it. I always felt different, like an outsider that was viewing life from outside of my body at times, or looking through a TV screen. An alien put on this earth to try to understand why humans do what they do. I had no idea that this was a common feeling that a lot of autistics have. This was just my life. I didn't know any different. And while I always knew that I was different, I thought everyone else felt the same on some level, but they were just better at hiding it than I was. When I was really young, I tried desperately to fit in. That was probably when I began masking, but I wasn't adept enough in masking to do it well, and I also didn't know that I was trying to mask because I didn't know what it was. I was picked on, called names, and I survived by being really palatable, likable, and not sticking out because that way I could kind of fly under the radar. And if you're under the radar, people aren't as likely to notice you and pick on you. That was also how you made friends, or what I thought was how you made friends back in those days. And if you had friends, you at least had people around you to shield you from the meanest kids. But sometimes the friends would pick on me too, and that hurt more because it was unexpected. When you're a neurodivergent kid, criticism becomes your norm. So you become on high alert at all times because at any moment criticism is going to come your way because it always does. Confusion and shame take over and you scramble to fix your behavior, logging it into your mind that next time you get the urge to stim, for example, don't. They say that one of the key red flags that you're in an emotionally abusive relationship is confusion followed by shame. That is exactly what it felt like as a young child. When I look back on those early years, my memories are marred by confusion and shame. I felt like all I wanted was just to be happy, to get to do normal kid things, and I couldn't understand why the world, why other people didn't want me to be happy, couldn't allow me to be happy. Those feelings swiftly turned into deep-seated terror at saying or doing something wrong every day, not stopping until that moment you're alone at home, or snatching little moments throughout the day like in the loo. I'd stim like crazy in the loo to try to get it all out. And then you have to go out and do it all over again. Hop through the minefield, exhausted by the time you get home, the only safe space in this world. The deep-seated terror was something I carried on my back into my teenage years and probably still do as an adult. I'm just more adept at masking now, so I don't notice it as much. But it's also become such a big part of my natural state. Well, it's not really natural, but my usual state when I'm around people, that I just don't notice it anymore. In my teenage years, I, like everyone, was put into a category. I had realized that I was never going to be normal. I was never going to fit in. So I was going to be exactly the opposite of everyone else. Not to be contrarian, more like as a way to distance myself enough from the status quo so that I was allowed to figure out who I was and how I wanted to express myself. The problem was, people really didn't like that. I was singled out, ruthlessly bullied and ridiculed by everyone in that school, which is not an exaggeration when I say that. Even the teachers joined in. I clung to a small group of friends who were in the same boat as me. And looking back, I can recognize signs of neuro-divergence in all of us, so maybe that was how we found each other. We kept each other alive. This experience made me hard and jaggedy, and very, very angry. I was especially disappointed, as the diary entry shows, when the illusion that grown-ups are supposed to protect you completely shattered, when I realized they could be just as mean as children. Also, the fact that they kept telling us when we were growing up that if you're getting bullied, tell a teacher, only for the teachers to do absolutely nothing once we told them what was going on. We even went to the headmaster, and nothing was done. But that wasn't everything. Even though my small group of friends were a great support, they would comment on things that I now know were my stims that I severely needed to get through the high stress of going to a school where everyone actually and actively hated me. They would snap, "Stop that," because it was stressing them out, and I'd promptly stop whatever I was doing, and it would be like daggers going through my brain. But I'd just sit there in discomfort. So I developed hidden stims, or at least ones that people didn't comment on, like crunching and flexing my toes inside my shoes, finger posturing, fiddling with my clothes, my pen, or my hair, adopting a look of deep thought whenever doing it, so that it would look like I was thinking about something, and that was why I was doing it. In my late teens, I switched school, as all Swedish children do at that age, to go to what Americans would call high school. It was a perfect time to try on a new mask that I had been molding this whole time through gathering masses of data and logging it in my brain. And people liked it. Not only did they like it, they loved it. I had a bunch of new friends, was going to parties, nobody was bullying me. Yet, I still felt like an outsider looking in, like I was more mature as I watched people go through things that I had worked through intellectually years and years ago. I could pass off my weirdness as quirkiness, because people like quirky, people don't like different. I was also dealing with questions about my sexuality during this time, but the day-to-day of just navigating school life and learning the new social norms of being in high school took up way too much of my energy. So I didn't have time to fully admit to myself my pansexuality. So I'd just actively ignore those thoughts whenever they popped up into my head. One thing I clearly remember during this time, which time and the mask just couldn't fix, no matter how much data I gathered and logged into my head, was that I'd be scared to be with people one-on-one if I was used to navigating them in a group setting, and vice versa. And then there was the parties, the suffocating anxiety that I didn't realize was anxiety at the time, that would consume me the days, the hours, the minutes before they started, that left me so exhausted that by the time I got to the party, I was already done. But you can't be tired at a party, so I'd just fake it, always hyper aware of people around me, careful to make sure my mask fit the specific situation I was in, or gave the person or people I was interacting with exactly what they needed at that time. When I discovered alcohol, it changed the game. Suddenly, I became normal. Suddenly, I had something to consume before the party to dull that anxiety, and during to keep me communicative throughout the exhaustion, stress, and overthinking. Joyful, blissful alcohol, and the slippery slope that comes with it. I hardly drink alcohol anymore. I was self medicating with it, and the after effects of it just made me feel worse the older I got. It wasn't working, so I stopped. Many autistic people have alcohol problems for this exact specific reason, and I completely understand how you can get there as an autistic person myself. Because alcohol makes you feel neurotypical, and that is such a relief when your whole life is filled with that terror that I was describing before, that terror of doing something wrong, and that hypervigilance to make sure that you don't do or say anything wrong. Throughout my childhood, but maybe especially during these high school years, I always had this niggling exhaustion that I couldn't quite explain. I'd need days to rest after school. My weekends were precious to me, and I wanted to spend them alone because that was the only time I could rest, only time I could fully be myself and dedicate my time to my special interests and hobbies that made my life feel worthwhile. This part of myself I never wanted to tell people about because this was the real me, the soft, squishy warmness, my happy place, my nest of safety. I didn't want to have people criticize my happy place. I could never catch up on rest though, even though everyone else was doing so much better on a lot less than I was. Then the term introvert crossed my way, and I thought, that's a bit of me, that. Finally, I have something to point to when people don't understand why I don't want to hang out every weekend. But that didn't really fit either. I wasn't completely introverted because I did enjoy social situations when I knew what to expect and with people I trusted. My parents, bless them, showed me that you always need to push yourself, push through the discomfort. There's that saying, discomfort is always temporary, but it's not though, not when you're autistic. Crying so much when you get dropped off at school so that the teachers have to tear you off the coat rack that you're clinging to for dear life, screaming after your parent. You go to school anyway. The kid doesn't know a lick of this new language in this new country, so nobody is able to communicate with them. You'll just have to learn the language the hard way. Got the flu? Well, you're going to celebrate Christmas with the family anyway and sit at that dinner table even though you have a fever so high you can't see straight. You're so pale you look like a ghost in all the photos. It's no wonder I'm now so burnt out that I haven't been able to work in 3 years. No wonder why I'm unable to ask for help as an adult. But they were doing their best. That's the thing. They were undiagnosed themselves, raised in that way, that life had to be hard because it was hard. Life had been hard for them, and they'd survived by always pushing themselves through everything. In their eyes, of course, they teach me their main survival tactic. Looking back on my childhood as an adult, there is a dark cloud over it, even though I'd say that in general it was a happy childhood. Things were tough, sure, but I had happy moments. I always felt like life was very hard, and before I realized I was neuro-divergent, I'd always been perplexed by that feeling because I couldn't really point to why it was so hard. The bullying, yes, obviously, But the hardship was so much more than that. Absurdly, the bullying was sometimes the easiest thing to deal with because it was expected, and the bullies always followed the same script. Life was hard, but there was no reason for it. There are other people who objectively have it much worse. I had a home, a stable family, hobbies I liked doing, and I even had a few friends. So why was everything riddled with so much struggle? In Swedish, we have this saying, kämpa emot vind. The rough translation is struggle against the wind. It doesn't mean the same thing as it does in English, which you'd assume is something along the lines of going against the grain. It means literally pushing forward, but that it's very difficult to get anywhere because the wind is so strong, it keeps holding you back, so that you have to use double the amount of energy to get where you need to go. An uphill battle, that's the best way to translate it. That's exactly what my life has always felt like. I'd be getting pushed by the wind, having to put double the energy into getting where I needed to go, while I saw the other kids sprint right past me, and them not even being tired once they got to their destination. Meanwhile, it had felt like I had run a marathon. Now, as an adult, I'm starting to understand why. And once you become aware, it's quite overwhelming. I mourn for that little girl who was actually disabled, who needed support but got none. I mourn for the life that I could have lived. Could have been kinder to myself. I could have known that there was nothing wrong with me, that I'm not an alien, that I'm not broken. My brain is just built differently. So my goal now as an adult is to take care of that little girl. I had always wanted one of those squeezy toys when I was little, but my parents wouldn't let me. I now know it was because I could stim with it, and that having one of those around would have greatly helped me. So what did I do? I went and bought one for myself as an adult because I owed it to that little girl. And when I stimmed with it, I think it healed a part of myself and opened a door to self-accommodation that changed my life. I could feel that small child inside my chest, overjoyed at getting to squeeze that toy as much as I wanted, and nobody was going to stop me from doing that ever again. That was all for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to share your own experiences in the comments, please do. I'd love for the comments to become kind of safe space for us to share our own experiences, because I learned through stress rehab that listening to other people share their experiences is a great way to heal yourself, because you realize that you're actually not as alone as you thought you were. Anyway, like I said, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye!